Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to our first ever cross-chapter webinar. My name is Kasia, and I will be facilitating this webinar. And I have just the first question. If you can confirm, all the people listening to us, if you can hear us, if you can see us, if everything is fine, and just say hello. If you do. And before we start, I would like to introduce, first of all, two words about the plugin in general, and then I would like to introduce the topic and our lovely speakers. So what are we? Who are we? Plugin, we're an international community of Polish people abroad working in innovation and technology. We are a community of nomads, business owners, alumni, with a common goal to spread positive image of Polish innovation abroad, and as the name says, to plug in the local communities into a larger global network. We have chapters all over the world in major cities, including Paris, London, Singapore, and San Francisco. And me, myself, I'm a chapter head of the chapter in Paris. So we are here today to talk about a very interesting topic, which is I created a successful startup abroad, how to create a successful startup abroad and to be proud of it. And here with me, actually, we didn't realize it earlier, but we have a common topic today because the topic is mobility. You both created amazing startups in mobility, and I have two amazing speakers who also are in our community as well. They're pluginers. First one, let me introduce them. First one is Rafał Góralski, who is a tech entrepreneur, inventor, and a founder of several UK-based and international startups. His companies include GOVS Limited, I hope I read it correctly, you will tell me if I'm right, which sold over £1 million worth of original software solutions in over 30 countries, which is a huge achievement. And I think this is the startup we're going to talk about today. He's going to confirm in a second.
Actually, 100 million.
Okay, great. And another information about Rafał is that he created an Inway UK. There's a company that helps Polish companies to get into the UK market. And currently he works on two new projects, which is IQ Health for the, which I suppose is a health tech, and IQ Flow, which is a low-code platform for digitalization for companies. Hi, Rafał, how are you doing today?
Hi, Kasia. Very well. Thank you very much for this very kind introduction.
Okay, and we have our second speaker today, or our second guest, which is Tomasz Górka. Hi, Tomek. How are you doing today?
Hi, Kasia. I'm fine. I'm fine. A bit morning in my place.
Exactly. I'm going to ask about this in a second, but before that, I'm going to introduce you. So Tomek is a CTO, software engineer, and MBA graduate, and he co-founded automotive IT startup in Paris called Car Move that we're going to talk about today, providing car sharing service to Rent a Car, one of the biggest car rental companies in France. He's a member of Polish organizations like Association des ingénieurs et techniciens polonais en France, and Plugin, of course, because he belongs to our network. And he recently changed Parisian environment to move to the other side of the ocean, and we're going to talk about it too, because as he just mentioned, he's in San Francisco right now. Is this correct, Tomek?
That's definitely correct.
Awesome. So once again, guys, huge welcome to our guest today. And I don't know if you can hear us correctly. Please say if you do. And also you can write directly in the chat if you see us right now, where are you seeing us or hearing us from? Because I'm pretty sure we have a pretty international community, and it would be amazing to see where you can see us or watching us from, or where this community extends to, because this is also a part of the deal. So to kind of warm up the interview or our discussion today, we already talked about Tomek. Maybe Tomek, you can tell us, you are in San Francisco. Why are you there?
Well, I closed my chapter in Paris Actually, I'm no longer co-founder and no longer CTO in the Carmel. I went out from my previous company, and now I left to San Francisco to open a new chapter.
Great. Okay, we're going to chat about this as well. And you, Rafał?
Tomek, just let me ask, new chapter in your life or new chapter for plugin or both?
It's both, actually.
Yeah, that's correct. Actually, it's both because Tomek will be chapter head of the San Francisco chapter. So this is huge. So Rafał, where are you calling from?
I'm currently in Cardiff in the UK, where I've been living for the last 15 years. Can't believe that. So unlike for Tomek, the weather is horrible. No surprise here. And it's already dark.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. So let's dive in. We prepared several questions for you. And let's maybe start with a background question. So where are you from in Poland? This is the first question. And at what point did you leave the country and maybe why? Tomek?
I was born in Czerwianka in Silesia part. So this is the part of Poland I originally from. I was studying in Krakow and I was living there for a big part of my life. So this is also the city I assume it's my place in Poland as well. And actually, I left Poland several times, and the first time was during the studies when I was exchanged to École des Mines in Paris, and this is the first time I was actually living in France. After after graduation, I set up in Krakow. I was living there and working as an independent developer. And after several years, I decided to move to Paris permanently. Mostly because like my client at those time was my previous supervisor from Les Mines, who left the university and created a startup in legal tech in Paris. So I was kind of diving already in a startup environment just after the graduation of my studies.
Okay, cool. That's pretty interesting. How about you, Rafał?
I was born in Chełm, which is at the eastern border. And when I was young, we moved to Białystok, and that's where I grew up and went to the university, to the Polytechnic University of Białystok. And after graduating, I really wanted to travel around, learn more about the world. And I found a job in Hong Kong, and I moved there for about 2 years. Then came back to work in Warsaw for a couple of years and then moved here.
Okay, pretty interesting. So, Tomasz, you mentioned that you arrived to France for your studies and then you stayed. At the time, what did you think? For how long you were going to stay there? What is your plan?
Well, I was in my studies there. Then I came back to Krakow, and I was working in Krakow as an independent developer. And my main client was my supervisor, so I was working remotely from Poland to Paris. That's why after a few years, I decided to move permanently to Paris. When I moved there permanently, I became like the employee in the startup, and the initial plan was staying there for next few years to see how is it living there permanently as not a student anymore. and my plan was to stay for a few years and then to decide to go explore some places like more further, like outside European Union, or to stay there even longer if it was the place for me, or coming back to Poland if, with the French experience.
Okay. So how did this plan come along? You fulfilled it and then decided to close the chapter.
Actually, yeah. I mean, after a few years, it surprisingly went exactly like I planned. Like I fulfilled the chapter in Paris, and now I plan to open the new one in US.
Okay, that's great. So Rafael, you mentioned the episode, let's say, in China. Can you tell us a little bit more about it? Why did you go to China, and then why did you move to the UK?
China. Well, why not, right? It's a fascinating culture. I was always very inspired by the Eastern thought and philosophy, and really wanted to go and see how it looks. And an opportunity came up, and I jumped on it without thinking twice, and it's been great. It's definitely a great place to see. And then I came back to Poland to get married, actually. And then my wife was upset that she has never been abroad, and well, not never been abroad, never lived abroad for a longer time. And she convinced me to come here. So we did.
Okay, and this is how you ended up in the UK, I understand.
Well, yes, we moved here, and
Okay.
I got an offer from a university of doing my PhD here. And I did that, and it was boring and waste of time. And after, because all that time I was only thinking like, I really should be doing a company instead. It was great time to start a software house in Poland and be selling services to the UK. Because I come from the software development background as well. Been working in Poland in software. And I really thought it was wasting time. But that's when I started building my products. That was during the PhD. So it wasn't a complete waste of time, I suppose. But I didn't know it at the time. And I was really frustrated.
This is great because it's a segue to my next question. So at the time you were already thinking about creating company, or it was more about creating your own product, your own software?
I was always thinking about creating company, even before. In Warsaw, I tried a few times and always fell flat on my face. I somehow never had luck to meet the right people to do a company with, and that's a very important thing. It's difficult to do it on your own. And in the UK, there were a few reasons why I thought it's good to use the university research as the platform to start the company. It's the unique intellectual property, unique sort of IP product that is based on some sort of knowledge and technology that is not easy to copy by somebody else, and it's somewhat unique. So at that point, it wasn't maybe my favorite sort of way of doing a company or my dream product, but it's important to work with what you've got and use the advantages you've got to build a successful company, I think, and it works.
Okay, this is great. And how about you, Tomasz? Did you think at the time you arrived to France, or when you were in Poland, that you're going to create a company?
I wanted to create a company. I wanted to be also like the CTO, like the founder CTO of the companies, like since my study time. But at those time, it was not the time for that, I would say, even if I was like independent developer. So it was kind of entrepreneurship things to do already. And I was working in a startup in France initially. So I knew how the ambience looks like. But as I said, it was too early for me, and I wanted to explore if something else is better fit for me. That's why the next company I went into was like a bigger company where I become like the software architect, and to check like with them, to challenge myself with large scale projects with large scale code base and management with the people and things like that. At the beginning, it was hard to make the transition, like a transition back from the startup ambience to like the corporate one. But over the time, I think I made it really well.
We think you do because we can see results. So I think that's correct. And my next question is, so actually none of you have any direct relationship to mobility, but then you created a startup, or you co-created a startup in mobility, which is very interesting. It will be my next question. But before that, I just want to ask the audience and people who are watching, what mobility startups are you excited about at the moment, or in general, the mobility trends? If you have some, please share with us in the chat, and Marcin will pass them to us. So Rafał, why mobility then?
Well, I wasn't thinking about mobility per se. It was more like the research we were doing at the university, and the product was based to the marine domain. It was enabling people to analyze the marine domain environment in real time in 3 dimensions. Not VR back then, because that was sort of 2005, 2010, the span of this development. But it just lent itself well to managing the movement of ships, managing the safety of navigation, avoiding the disasters, environmental disasters such as oil spills, and also managing the fisheries. And these are all huge things, hugely important. 90% of global trade and goods shipped are moving onto ships, and fisheries are extremely important for sustainable fishing, for people to be able to feed themselves. In many countries rely on them as the primary source of food, and it was always close to me. I loved that domain because I was a sailor since I was a kid. So I thought, why not? It's a fascinating area, and let's explore what can be done in it. And as in many areas, a lot can be done to improve, to innovate, to think differently. Although shipping had this advantage that it's probably not as trendy as other places, such as electric cars or autonomous vehicles. So there's less competition there, and you don't have to be quite as smart to do something great, which suited me, I suppose.
This is great. And can you tell us, because I think that in the introduction I only said the general description of the company. Can you tell us what is the solution that you developed?
Well, I can say what it is now. It wasn't that when we started. With many projects, you sort of, it depends. You either have a solution looking for a problem to solve. You've got a solution and you think, where's the best market fit for it, so you can profit from it. Which means you look for people who can get some value from what you've got. And you can monetize on that value. So that was my scenario. I wasn't sure how to apply my software, but through market research, talking to different people, validating different opportunities, we found a niche which was in need of that. And nowadays it is a huge sort of distributed system where you've got the whole network of sensors on shore and on ships, on oil platforms, radars, VHF transponders on ships, different sensors. And that platform aggregates all this data in real time and creates and distributes it to many different screens and presents it in 2D and 3D map environment. So authorities can manage their waters, and that's been sold to a few countries at the country level. The latest deployment is in Philippines. But there was Indonesia before, there was Bahrain, Kuwait. And we also sold it to sell it to smaller ports, or used to sell it. Same as Tomasz, I no longer work for the company after having sold it and stayed for a few years. But now I want to focus on my new businesses. But it was a huge adventure, that's for sure.
Yeah, I can see. And what about you, Tomasz? Why mobility? How did this happen?
Well, as Rafał said, it's interesting field. I like the cars itself. I like everything over the cars, the traveling, and for myself, I was working with many fields before, and mobility was one of the fields I was working, like with the health, with electronic documents, with law, with cosmetics, pharmacy, and then it was the time to enter the mobility. Like actually, I was entering that because at a certain point of time, I was like going to the meetups, going to the tech community gatherings in Paris, and I was also open to the market. I was answering all the messages on LinkedIn and things like that. And in one of the meetings, I was interviewed by the startup studio, and the startup studio was funded by the car rental company. And I thought myself, it's an interesting topic, and it would be the good next adventure to enter into this field.
This is very interesting. Actually, I didn't know about that part, so I'm discovering as well. A new thing about you. Could you tell us, just like Rafał did, a few words about what the company is doing, so we have a bigger picture about what you developed?
So the CarMove is a car sharing software company. The company is creating the whole car sharing solution, starting from automatizing the rental process, checking the documents of the users, taking the payment, connecting to the cars itself. So we have small boxes that we are installing in the vehicles, and we could like connect remotely from the car to read all the properties, to remotely open, close the car, even block the engine of the car. And based on that, we have like the whole solution that we sell to other companies who would like to have the car sharing service over themselves, but they don't have the capabilities to create it by their own. And honestly, why to create always the same service over all those companies? So we are kind of man in the middle, so it's kind of B2B2C type business. And we are targeting mainly like the car rental companies, the corporate clients who has the fleet of the car, and they want to share the car, for example, between the employees, or like anyone who has like the fleet of the car and want to manage it by car sharing way. And it allows to share the car like 24 hours, putting like even the car somewhere, so it could be open over the phone, and it's make the separation between the car management, car rental, and the maintenance of the process itself. So the human doesn't need to be involved in the process itself on the real time.
Okay, that's interesting. So I understand that you kind of met your co-founders through some kind of matchmaking. So how did it go in terms of like teamwork for such a team that kind of was artificially created?
So it was with the frame of startup studio. I don't know if everyone knows this idea. It's the idea that the startup studio, so the company has the idea and they are recruiting the co-founders for the idea. That's why they recruit me as a CTO and my future business partner as the CEO. So they have the idea that they need, and they know it would be successful, and they just finding and recruit the people who they knew that they will be able to make those ideas happen. And actually, it went pretty well for myself. I was actually in favor of this way of entering into the startups by myself. And I really like my co-founder, and we were involved into the project, and we started like very rapidly to do everything, to recruit the first employees and to build a company. And it was very nice because from the day one we already had the backup from the investor, not only the financial to be able to hire new people, not only like the offices that he gave us in their campus, and the resources also, like the vehicles to test, and access to his network on the rental agencies to have the knowledge base initial to create the service.
This is awesome. It's very interesting, which brings me to Rafał, because I know that your project evolved. This is my guess or my understanding. Do you also have co-founders on this project, and how did you find them?
Yes, we did pivot or like search for our space. I didn't have co-founders. That's sad. And this model that Tomasz was part of, it sounds like a fantastic idea. It would have solved my problems with finding co-founders before. On this one, I didn't. But what we did have was a commercialization unit, let's call it, research sort of unit which specializes at the uni in commercializing the IP developed at the university. So they had some contacts, and because of those contacts, I was able to raise some initial investment, and that definitely helped develop the idea further. And investors introduced some sort of good governance structure and some directors onto the board. So I didn't have co-founders, but I did end up with a number of co-workers, directors, advisors. And then then I had to build the team by hiring the right people, which was another huge story. Real make or break of any company.
I will ask about that in a second because it sounds like an interesting story. If you could just tell us a little bit more about this investment. So you had one round of funding. How did it develop, or did this take off after funding? How does it turn out?
Didn't take off that quickly. We had to actually develop a viable commercial product, which took us about 2 years. We never wanted to have more than just that first round of funding. And we really wanted to develop a product, like sort of minimum viable product, which we could actually sell, because I believe that we wouldn't get a decent valuation if we wanted to raise more money without landing some sales first. And the sales in this sort of environment took very long time. It's a conservative industry, and the sales were pretty large. These were large projects, and it took a long time for clients to budget and tender and so on and so on. So it wasn't easy. It took us a long time. And we got some grants for innovation as well, which we used. And we took some little sort of, not really second round, but like first round plus a little bit extra about 3 years later. But at that time, we were looking for an industrial investor, and we found somebody who wanted to buy the company, which again, probably was the biggest mistake, selling it too early. And one of the biggest problems with having investors is that you don't always have full control of your decisions. They may force some decisions. But there was no other way anyway.
Okay, and how about you, Tomasz? Did you have investors other than the company?
Well, as I said, like the investor was also the initial, one of the initial founder in the company. So it was from the day one. It was the only one we had, and yeah, that means it was like the strong investor with the strong word in the company, but also he gave us the backup of the knowledge base, of the resources, of the cars, and that was really, I feel like, in even other car sharing companies in France and Paris, it was like always needed to have someone like that in the back to start in this field particularly.
Okay, that's interesting. I have a question about this location specific part of your business, but I'm curious about the point that Rafał mentioned about the employees. So why don't you tell us about this a little bit? How did the recruitment go, and how did managing people go, and how many employees did you actually have?
So yes, I started the hiring process like maybe not day one, but something like day two, from creating the companies, and we're actively finding the people, especially the software developers in the company. And it was kind of problematic to find a person in Paris, especially in a small early stage startup, without having like the name that everyone knows. And we were located not in the center of Paris, but a bit on the edge. So that also makes the impact for the hiring process as well. And over the time, we're working also with the freelancers and the web agencies to just bootstrap the project while we haven't got the developers at my place. So the number of people were a bit changing, it was always a bit small size company. It was the maximum I would say 6 people, something like that. But with the freelancers and with the web agencies, it was sometimes bigger, sometimes less. Especially that our investor, we were situated on their campus, so it was close to have their IT team, and sometimes they help us with for example, having Scrum Master of the investor with us, so we didn't need to hire this person by ourselves.
Okay, great. So Rafael, I felt that you have a story about the employees or recruitment to tell us. So this is the moment.
Well, that is definitely a fascinating story, although frustrating at times as well. Because I think recruitment is the most important aspect of making a successful business. And we had some luck and some maybe less luck with some people. And we went through sort of stages. Initially, I recruited just 2 software developers, and I was also doing the software development. And we were sort of like 3 of us for about a year. Then we grew a bit, then we grew a bit again. So it was maybe 5, then 8. Maybe 1 plus, 1 minus. Somebody spent some time and then went. And then we sort of grew to up to 20, 25 people over, let's say, 3-4 years. And those initial people that you recruit are the most important, because as a startup, you've got very limited funds and you can't make a bad decision, and there's your not just money wasted, but even more the time and the development effort. If it's not the top quality, you will struggle. And we had that with our first version of the platform server, which was crashing constantly. And we found a fantastic first client who wanted to buy it and invest in us. And then after they've had the server for a month and it was crashing 3 times a day, they sort of never bought it and never invested. And this first guy wasn't a very good software engineer, and he had this attitude that, you know, software is always buggy, don't you know? Didn't you watch Bill Gates present in Windows and with blue screen? And I was explaining to him, look, you know, maybe Bill Gates had that misfortune. Maybe it didn't kill Microsoft, but we are not Microsoft and we can't afford that. Luckily, the number 2 guy was much better. And actually, he chose this job because he thought it was exciting. I offered him less money than the other offer he had from a big corporation. And he accepted because he wanted to build something exciting in a startup. So he had all the right motivation, and he was a really good engineer. And thanks to him, it was a success later, I suppose. Partly thanks to him, thanks to other people as well. So yes, it is a challenge finding the right people, definitely.
Which brings my next question. So if you had imagine this kind of problem with your first employee, at what point you realize that actually it's going to work? Like, despite the problems, maybe it's not there yet, maybe there's some bugs, but I think it's going to work and we're going to have a nice company. What was the breakthrough moment for you?
Well, there are 2 questions in this one. Is when do you see it's going to work with this employee? Sometimes you never see it's going to work. But with the company generally, I think it's interesting because some people have very strong conviction from the beginning that their product or idea is fantastic. We had this solution looking for problems. Sometimes you know there is a problem and you design a solution, and it's better when it's market-led and customer need-led. In our case, we had some doubts until we started going to different conferences, industrial conferences, looking what the competitors had in terms of systems like that. And we just saw ours was so much better. But it was just us thinking this. And it took the clients telling us that and generating real interest and then actually wanting to buy it to realize that we really have a company. I don't think you have a company until you can really sell your product.
That's a great remark. How about you, Tomasz? At what point you felt like, okay, this actually is gonna work?
I would say I knew it would work from the beginning, because we actually had the client from the beginning. I was starting with developing by myself, so I had the plan what to do. I knew what is actually needed, and the question was more how fast we could be able to deploy the working solution, and the obstacles could like slow us down, or the benefit could make it faster. But I knew that eventually it will work. So I was confident with that all the time. But it wasn't actually the case, for example, it wasn't the case all the time with the investor employees, for example. And that was that there were like the turning point where we had a presentation in front of the employee of this rental company that were a bit skeptical about our solution. Why is it there, and why we just doing that at all? And we showed them how to make all the process on their actual phones, and everything went seamless. And the moment when they were able, using their phones, to open the car, to close the car, to just enter, and like engine is unblocked, and drive it just like that. This was the moment they realized that this is like the new thing. This is the new era for the new technological era in their companies, on their fleet. And this was the turning point, I think.
That's a very, very cool moment. Tomasz mentioned something that makes me think about you, Rafael, when you told us about your first employee and the potential loss it created, like his work and his lack of engagement and stuff. How do you estimate like how much it delayed your project or how much it cost you?
Well, it's impossible to estimate that, but just the lost sale at that time was probably about £200,000, which is a lot for a startup, and it delayed us probably by a year. It was a huge blow, to be honest. And having to rewrite all this server side of the system in a new technology stack wasn't easy. So it's best to avoid those bad decisions, and don't compromise on when you know what you want, and maybe your employees are not sharing your conviction, trying to dilute your vision and do something a little bit less ambitious. You can't do that. You have to make sure you do the right thing, if you want to learn from my mistake, that is.
This is very cool. I think everyone watching us, is a very cool tip to note. The first hire, maybe one of the biggest, let's say, success of your company, or it may be the end of it. So hire wisely. Thank you, Rafael. I think this is very, very important. So guys, write it down. To change to like kind of wrap up the whole company what is for you the biggest achievement and the biggest failure of this adventure, or maybe for your company or you as entrepreneur in this company, Rafał?
Oh, that's a difficult question. I was hoping you'd ask Tomasz first because it would give me some time to think and I could copy his response. I don't know. So do you want to switch?
Now,
Maybe there's
now I will copy your response.
Oh, jeez. That's so bad to be put on a spot like that. Mistakes, too many to count. I don't think it's important to not take them too seriously. You know, it's not to be too hung up on them and avoid yourself. I mean, try to avoid the mistakes. Try to learn from others. Try to think things through. Really, don't rush with some decisions. But also, you can't get paralyzed by inability to make decisions. So you are bound to make mistakes. You are bound to make some really bad decisions, and it's important to give you and also your employees a space for experimenting and learning through failing as well. But it's also important to be able to then get up and continue but learn from the mistakes you've made and don't repeat them. And so there were plenty of mistakes, no doubt, but it all really worked out. So I'm really proud that this business created sort of something out of nothing, from the land of pure thought, pure ideas. You are able to create something real and tangible that you can that other people can be using to make sort of their work better or their life better. That's pure magic of what I think that the tech businesses are about, and that's what excites me. So I know it sounds a lot like, I don't know, some politician talking and not really answering the question, but I don't know how to do it better.
Okay, we have a big vision, big answer to this question. How will Tomasz respond?
Okay. Can you rephrase the question maybe?
The question was about your company's biggest achievement in your eyes, or biggest failure in your eyes, if you want to share these with us. Or it can be your global perception of the business, just like Rafał did. Feel free to interpret the question as you wish.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess there is no company without mistakes, and it obviously happens, and there is like even the small technical decisions that as a CTO, every CTO need to take all the time. That could lead, for example, to something that makes more or less work. And yeah, definitely there were some decisions that makes the project a bit longer. And there were also like the time of experiments that allows us to figure out the solutions that makes it happen. I mean, also like the one of the big disappointment was the fact that, for example, after many months of intense work, every people in the company were very involved, all of us. Like we make the small deployment, and we saw like the first actual customers were probably trying to steal the cars, and I mean it was really disappointing moment. Fortunately, like our solution were proof to that from the day one. Actually, we were able to prevent those stuff better than the regular solution, and it actually proof of our solution as a better than than traditional cars, but it was still like, oh, that's not what we expected to have. And the biggest achievement, maybe the biggest achievement was when we had like a bit bigger spot rented at Gare de Lyon in Paris, and we got a brand new red Fiat 500 from the factory. Came, we put it our solution. I tested if all the cars were working, and I took the car and drive to those at night to those parking and park there, and I saw like all the cars with the stickers of the first client car sharing service. It was looking really amazing, and it was like this was the moment when I saw that's an achievement.
That's a very nice story. Pretty rewarding, I see.
Yeah.
So, Rafał, you need to tell us something to match stealing a ship.
That would be interesting.
Pirates try to steal ships, and well, they do steal ships of Somalia and places like that frequently. And we were developing a version of a solution to sort of be able to take control over the ship. I think very similar to the Tomasz's car solution, where you know the crew could hide in some sort of safe room and lock themselves there, and the pirates could do nothing because the ship would just sail away and they couldn't control it because you would control it remotely. We never sold this version of the solution, but we were working on that.
Okay, that's pretty impressive. So to people watching us, if you want to ask any business questions to our speakers, to Rafał and Tomasz, do not hesitate. Marcin will pass us the questions. So you can do it right now. And we already have one question, which is, did you apply to any World Startup Accelerated, like, for example, YC Combinator from the US? And if you did, do you have any tips? Tomasz, Rafał?
Well, maybe this time I can start. So I started with the Startup Studio, which is kind of accelerator frame. It's not the scale of Y Combinator or something like that, but it's already like the frame maybe more similar to the German Startup Studio, like the Rocket Internet in smaller scale in Paris. But this is to enter there. The process is more from the recruitment process, so it's like more similar to enter a big company, but it's a recruitment to be a founder, not to be an employee.
Which is
okay,
fantastic.
so
maybe Rafał has tips for other.
Well, we have. Well, I've never entered any Y Combinator or anything like that. But if I could, I probably would have, because I think it really helps. But probably your chance of building a successful startup is much higher if you do that. But probably there are also downsides. So it depends on your situation and what your idea is and what the alternative ways for you of developing this idea are available. I think for many people it will make perfect sense to join an accelerator like that. For some it may not be the right idea, so also don't rush and don't think there's only one way, because everybody has to find a way that will work for them.
And there are different kind of accelerators. There are like I said, startup studios. There are accelerators, and there are like I remember I was in the company I was employee. were in the Microsoft accelerator frame in Paris, where we had only kind of co-working space with other companies, which was helping, but in different ways as well. So for every company, I guess different kind of accelerator would be the good fit, and not going to one. It's not end of the story. There are many different companies in the world, not only two.
So guys, maybe I'm taking it too far, but I think the tip in here is to first look at what you're doing, at what your needs are, and it's not like Y-C Combinator is the way for everyone in the world, and there are different formats. So for example, Tomasz tried a few, and I feel like they match different needs of your companies at the time. So this brings us to the last part of our meeting today. And I would like to talk to you a little bit about the country where you built your startup in, and about you being a foreigner in this country, etc. So the first question is, maybe Rafał, I'll start with you. Do you think that you would be able to build a startup elsewhere than the UK? Or is it like UK specific, it was easier there? What do you think?
Well, I don't think it could only be built in the UK, by no means. I think Poland is a great place to build a startup as well, and many different countries are great. Of course, the support structure for businesses is different in different countries, and UK isn't the best in Europe for that. Norway is much better, for example. Although it has improved probably a little bit since when I was doing that. And Poland improved a lot, I think, as well. In case of my business, I think that because it was marine, the links of UK with marine are, have been established. And then, there's a huge history of, that being the marine power nation, and that helped. I think it was a good place to start this type of business. But no, you never should think that, the country you are in determines your chances. You should just be doing your thing that you think you need to do, that your heart tells you to do.
So just to follow up, just to be a little bit more specific, were your clients or your first clients from the UK? Did like connection that you established there were crucial to start? Maybe not at all.
Well, not at all. Actually, the UK is famous for not wanting to help their own companies and never buying, and sort of like, it's absolutely like the opposite culture. They will buy anything from abroad, like from French, for example, but never from their own, which is bizarre. So no, our first clients were not. Actually, the first client was Panama Canal, and those guys, we really clicked with them when I met them in Istanbul at some conference and a trade show. And then it was a huge sale to a very prestigious place. UK, no, that came later and still is maybe 1% of our sales. Maybe.
Okay, I see. How about you, Tomasz? Do you think that France was really the place to be for your startup?
I don't know, honestly. I'm still a bit surprised about the Rafał answer, because in my mind, the UK was the place for startups in Europe. And I mean, the mobility startups, and especially the car sharing could be done everywhere. So France is just one of the places. And even like my business partner, he had startups. He was creating startups before in Africa and East Asia, so it's like just one of the place. And it was more, I was in France, I wanted to be in France, and that's why I was creating startups there. And hard to say because I would say I should answer this question in about 1 year once I will, for example, create some startups in US, and then I will have my personal comparison, not only from the things I was talking with other people, and especially that the startups very often need to have like the local local complexity in mind. For example, like when I was doing the car sharing, the Paris was very specific place where there were like many car sharing companies already, so the competition were very high, and we needed to find like our niche and our target that we answer the problems. And for even for those niche, for those problems, it could be different in France and different in Poland and different in San Francisco. Like only the thing that in Paris, for example, there are different roads, there are very good metro system. There is a huge problem with the parking spots, and San Francisco and here there are like big distances, big roads, big cars that make the impact of the service. That might be detailed, but they are important in different places.
Okay, I see. Rafał, just so you know, we have a reaction from the audience saying,
Wow.
It is interesting that you say that UK is not the best. I think it's a huge UK fan, because I was just reading that it was that London was ranked the top tech city of the future. Do you have any insights to that?
Well, we don't know if it still will be after Brexit, to be honest. Nobody knows, not even Londoners. I think somebody's got this opinion, but we will see what happens.
So just in your opinion, like London is not, or London or the UK,
No,
maybe a good place to start up, but the ecosystem is not so welcoming. This is, am I reading it correct?
The ecosystem there is for sure great, and in terms of VCs and so on, but it also depends on which sector. So, for example, London is famous for innovation in financial services sector. And if somebody is thinking about doing a fintech, then definitely it's a good place. But again, nobody knows how this will change after the end of this year. It may have a great future. For sure, it was a powerhouse until now. But for the last 4 years, companies are relocating to mainland Europe, to Frankfurt, to Warsaw, to Paris. So who knows what will happen? It's not what it used to be, for sure.
Okay, thank you for that. Dear viewer, if you want to rebound on this, please leave us a comment, and I will repeat it here to Rafał, and we can continue this discussion. But I mentioned the ecosystem, and this is one of my next questions, and maybe we can start with Tomasz. While working on your startup, did you have any connections or support from Poland in general, like through friends, networks, some organizations? Was Poland an important element of this picture or not at all?
Well, I was member of Polish Association of Engineers and Technicians in France. I was also like going to the lectures in Polish Academy of Science in Paris. I was going to like the Polish gatherings, so there were Polish people living in France somewhere around, and I mean, they were helping me more to showing me what is the difference between explaining me the cultural differences between the France and Poland, and how the things are going there, how the administration in France is going, because it's a bit different than the Polish one, and that make big impact not only in my personal life but general how to deal with life, with business, with everything. And in this manner, yeah, that was the help.
So since we are on the topic,
yeah.
So since we are on the topic, maybe you can tell us the differences that you faced.
Well, the first difference that faced me, like, was the administration. Of course, that is much bigger than in Poland and much more complex. And yeah, it was really challenging at the moment. And nowadays, I would say, yeah, it's administration like administration. It's just the things to do, but it was not the same at the beginning. Also, one of the big challenges, I mean, even if I know that it would be the big challenge, was the fact that I was not speaking French when I came to France. And that's a much bigger obstacle than I thought it would be. But
you touched on my second following question, but before we go there, I would like to hear from Rafał about this support or connection to Poland, and how did it impact your company or your stay in the UK?
Well, that will be a short answer. There was no support, no connection. That would be helpful. Other maybe than the fact that we employed 2 Polish developers at some point, and they were great, obviously, because Polish programmers are pretty good.
And they're known for that, just like you guys. Yeah. That's very, very nice, Tomasz. You started talking about obstacles. So this is my next question, actually. Is or was being a foreigner an obstacle or an advantage for you when you started your business?
To whom? To me? Or to Rafał?
To you.
Okay. So yes, obviously, as I mentioned, the big obstacle was the language, definitely, and of course there is no surprise in here. There were obstacles of not knowing the cultural differences, the way the people talk, like very indirectly comparing to Polish that are like more directly speaking, and that was the obstacle at the beginning, definitely. And I would even say the biggest one, maybe, even for starting business, for everything. But once, as I mentioned also before, once I understood the differences and on learning how is it working, and just starting doing it also that way, that gave me the advantage of being a foreigner in Paris, to be able to see on everything in both ways, the Polish and the French way, that the people there doesn't have, and that's a big plus.
Was it appreciated as a skill?
Yeah, I think yes, especially like in the professional life, when I was able to sometimes simplify the solution, or making more entering technical way of doing the technical or business conversations to cut it a bit shorter than it usually are. And I mean, that makes an effect a bit bigger and make the people understood the problem and being sure that everyone are on the same topic. That was appreciated, definitely.
That's a great skill, and I think we're known for that. I hear this comment very often as well. So what about you, Rafa? Was being a foreigner an advantage or an obstacle for you?
Well, for sure, it's not an advantage. It's, as Tomasz said, the language, the culture, it makes a difference. In terms of selling, you know, people like to buy from people like them, that they feel the natural connection. And in terms of making this small talk or cultural references, we are at a disadvantage. Of course, with time and as we spend, you know, we've been living longer in this country, that sort of diminishes and is less of an issue. But I think it very much depends on the people you are dealing with, and like, I mean, you can't generalize. Every person is different, and we can't hide the fact that in Britain there's a lot of people who are xenophobic and hate foreigners, and we've seen the majority of people who voted for Brexit. The reason was to get rid of Poles, to get rid of. Sometimes that it's funny situation. Some people voted for Brexit because they didn't like the Chinese living down the road. It's like there's a lot of that. But among educated people, it's different. Among business people, it's different. It depends which sort of social circles you are dealing with. And for some people, they will really like somebody who's a foreigner doing business in their country. And it will be an advantage then. Or people will be sort of suspicious initially, but if you impress them, then they will really swear by you, right? They will then, once you win them over, you know, they will like you even more, and that then becomes an advantage. So it really depends, but I'm pretty sure there were situations when being a foreigner meant a lost opportunity to sell something and lost business, and where a local salesperson would have won that business. I think so, but maybe the other way around as well. I wouldn't worry about it. In terms of like being unfairly treated or anything like that, not at all. It's been fantastic. I never felt any sort of discrimination from anybody. But I know people who work in sort of some companies sometimes who feel they are being discriminated. So it really depends. I think if you are running your business, it's less of an issue.
Okay.
Or if you work for a really good company, which takes equality seriously, there won't be any issue ever. But different situations happen.
Or if you create a company like this, just like you, I imagine.
If I can say something.
Some people really like you for that. Because it's doing something good for their company.
If I can say something, I love small talk. I learned it in France, and I think it's very important to enter into conversation and to getting know other people. This is something I really like from the way the French people doing it, and I wanted to keep it with myself as well. And I think that makes me also richer person personally, not only the Polish aspect but also the French one.
That's fantastic and very true. It's a very important skill. But having said that, when I was visiting clients in France or our research partners in France, they were much easier to make a small talk with. But they really like Polish people, and in the UK it depends. Some people do, some people don't.
Okay. This is very interesting because you actually touched on a question that we got from the audience, which is exactly this. While you were setting up in another country, did you face any biases? Now we heard a little bit your stories. Maybe Tomek, you can add a little bit on your side, and how did you turn it around? So, Rafael, if you want to just add something to what you already said.
Turn it around. Well, you just have to do your thing, and as I said, you can win somebody over, and then, wow, then that somebody will be your real friend after that. You just have to do a very, very good job, and that's it. Never, never feel down, never lose your nerves, never talk back. I don't know, depends on your temper, I suppose. But I'm trying to be always friendly and polite.
Okay, how about your temper, Tomek?
I would totally agree with Rafael. I mean, being polite and it is very important skill, and I mean, in France, I never had like the direct way of attacking me that I'm a foreigner or something like that. But I don't know. I don't see the French to be very direct with that. Generally speaking, there were over the time there were some time where there was a big discussion if the Eastern Europe countries doesn't enter Europe that often, that fast. It was during like the election time, and it was a bit, yeah, when I came to work and the people were discussing like that. I was like, okay, but it wouldn't happen. I wouldn't be here, and they actually liked me. That was like more indirect thing, and that made me feel quite sad, and I even didn't expect that. But over the time, I mean, the election were over, and all those stuff were over as well. I mean, yeah, that's maybe also like there were one situation at those time as well, that someone break the tire in my car. That was like a big hint for me. It was one of my neighbor from the house, and it was like I saw like in the news were in every channel at those time about the foreigner from Poland. That was a bad time in France. But there are always bad times, and after that coming good times. So
okay, but
being calm and doing yourself, it's going good.
And just like Rafael said, do you think that in some way it impacted your company?
My company were French, so it was not foreign company. It was French company based in France, working for other French companies with French clients. I was one of the founders that were not French, and I guess I was the only person in the company that were not French. So it's, I mean, it shouldn't impact the company itself. I would say much bigger problem was the fact that I was not very good in speaking French, and that's much more impactful.
Okay, I see. Rafael, do you want to add something, or?
Well, I think we could debate all night.
Okay, I think you're totally right. So we will be closely wrapping up this session. We have about 10 minutes left. So if you're watching us right now and you have a question, this is the moment to ask this question in a comment, so we can ask Tomasz and Rafał. And I have the last few questions for you, which are rapid fire questions, but you can answer, your answer can be long or short as you wish. So first question, we touched on this a little bit, especially on Rafał's side, but a mistake that you wish you avoided in terms of your business.
I think I've said enough on that.
I think we can agree. What about you, Tomasz?
I would say going earlier to France permanently. I was being afraid that it's a big change. It's a big stuff, and I was afraid that I was not speaking French at all and stuff like that. And now I think I should do it just earlier, and it just.
And what would it change for you to go earlier?
I would change. I would sooner go to US.
Good thinking. Good thinking. Okay, thank you. What about lessons learned from this business adventure? So maybe this time let's start with Rafał.
Well, again, there are so many. It's all one big learning adventure, and I think about people. I said about employees, but in one of my ventures after this one, I was working in partnership with some local people, and I must say that choosing your partners wise is probably even more important than choosing your employees. I think the importance of generally soft skills and understanding people's psychology and being able to talk to them and with them in a meaningful way. Also the need to really listen, to really understand somebody, not just talk. For me, that was big lesson, because I was always a technologist and I thought only technology matters, and all this, small talk, as Tomasz said, that was sort of making me nervous. I was like thinking that's a waste of time. Why are we, we should be talking technology, or don't waste time, just keep programming. And I didn't appreciate how important it is. And it's probably more important in creating a successful business than the technology you create, or equally important. It's like you need to stand on two legs, not just one. So I had to learn a lot of that. I hope I've learned some, and I'm still learning.
Great. Tomasz is nodding. What do you have to add?
What I have to add, for me, the lesson, but it's more like the personal lesson, is like the one that it's very hard, but at the beginning, like once I do something, then it starts to be easier and easier, and to encourage myself to do it. The same like for what I say to move to France. It was like the big change, and like being a CTO, I was of course afraid. Like it's a change to be co-founder, to lead the people, or to start hiring process, to doing like how can I recruit people? I never recruit people before, and but I just tend to prepare myself, doing very funny interview questions, and figure out like everyone likes my interview, even if they didn't, being accepted or didn't wanted to answer. They always answering. They loved how it was done, and I mean that was rewarding. But it means like I needed to encourage myself to do it the first time, and after it was like easier and easier.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. And we have a last question from the audience as well, which is, what would your advice be for us who are considering starting a startup? Rafał.
Well, it's a very unspecific question, because if you told us more about your startup, maybe it would be easier. Otherwise, we can just give sort of generic philosophical advice. Well, but generally speaking, I think the biggest thing is don't overthink it, just start it, and then you will learn as you go. Don't wait, don't take courses, don't think that you need to, don't know, maybe do a PhD, do the MBA first, or I know, Tomasz, it was good to have an MBA. I'm not saying it isn't, but
I did it after.
oh, that's even better. Don't wait, just do it. That's all there is to it. Just try and see how it goes, and learn and adapt, and it will be great. It may not work out, the first time, but it will be a roller coaster ride that you will be cherishing as a memory, and then maybe second time it will work, or third.
Okay, so Rafał's advice,
Or
you can
maybe
always
first.
cherish it as a memory and just go for it and try, so you can always learn something. What about you, Tomasz?
I agree with Rafał. It's a very broad question, definitely. And I would advise to have like the more specific questions and asking for the people that could help you. Like, for example, I can help with everything around like very technical aspects of building the startup, or the technical question about the technology or things like that. And I would say broadly, being with the community, with the people, going to the meetups, going to the some events where there are people, going to the LinkedIn, meeting just the people that can help you, that can give you the answer, and just being with the people. We are also like being nice, and yeah, the best example is of course being in plugin.
Look at that. What a beautiful, beautiful ending. Okay, guys.
It's the best place, right?
The best place to be. Well, I'm very glad that I am there. But yeah, okay, guys. I think that we are getting at the end of this session, and especially with a beautiful, beautiful ending from Tomasz. There's absolutely nothing else to add. So from this place, I wanted to thank you for sharing your stories with us. I don't know how people watching us, but I learned tons and I absolutely loved it. Your stories are very, very interesting and also show how much effort it took, and also how rewarding it was at the end to have your own company, in this case in mobility. So thank you guys once again for being with us. And one last goodbye statement to the audience. Rafał?
Well, thanks a lot for watching, and good luck with your startups, with your ventures. I'm sure you can do many great things and achieve much more than I have. And I wish you the success.
Well, that's a beautiful wish, because we can see that Rafał worked on many, many very nice projects. So thank you, Rafał, for that. And what about you, Tomasz?
I would thank everyone to watch this this live, and I also wish everything the best, and most importantly, to create the startup that is much better than ours, and getting us know how it goes.
Okay, guys, with these wishes, the startups will be the next unicorns, I can see. So thank you very much. Thank you from the Plugin Foundation. And we will keep on organizing this kind of webinars where we'll share stories, or maybe we'll think of some other new formats to share with you. And we'll keep you posted on the Facebook feed and in our newsletter. So let's keep in touch. Bye-bye.
And thank you, Kasia, for being a fantastic host.
It was my pleasure. It was my pleasure. And your stories are fascinating. So, okay, bye, guys.
Thank you, Kasia. Thank you, everyone.